Welcome back to another episode of Spectator Mode. I'm Neil Strebig. With me, as always, is Donald Double D DeCray.
Oh man, I love the hype.
Yeah, of course, man. Although it's about to thunderstorm here, so my solar
Oof.
power energy is just going down. But no, we got
Birdman.
we got I like the lineup today. I really do. I think we got a
Mhm.
pretty good mix. I say this every episode though. I'm like, I love the lineup, good
You
mix.
always love the lineup, but to be
I
fair,
do.
I don't know that everyone knows the process because we usually come into these with in the neighborhood of like 10 plus stories or like a dozen stories and cut down to half of that to actually go over. So I really do think we choose the ones that we're most into talking about and are most excited for. So it's a fair enough comment, I think. Personally, I think it is.
But we're going to talk a little about Super Mario movie, which probably has a very impressive Hollywood cast, or maybe not so impressive, depending which way you look at it. The Batman sequel, Robert Patterson's Batman, will be getting a sequel, so we'll be talking
Pattinson.
about that.
Pattinson? Yeah.
Pattinson?
Yeah.
All right, Robert Pattinson.
There you go.
All right, Robert Pattinson's Batman is getting a sequel, so we'll talk about that. Also, a Twitch streamer actually made a very interesting port for Elden Ring, so we're going to talk about that as well. I know we've talked about Elden Ring quite a bit, but
Yeah,
I
I
don't know. I'm
mean, it
actually pretty
probably
excited for
deserves
that
it,
one.
given the buzz.
And then some updates to Twitch as well, which might come as a surprise to some. The latest MCU movie as well, Doctor Strange, Multiverse of Madness. Some news coming out of that, and some more PlayStation news as well, as far as some updates on what they're going to do for indie games and free trials. To get us started, Super Mario movie will be delayed. I actually forget the exact date it's going to go, but it's going to be delayed a whole year. So what, 2024, right?
2023. It was meant to come
I'm
out
sorry. Yeah.
at the end of this year, I think in December, and now they're looking at I want to say spring of 2023 next year. So it's like a 4 to 5 month delay in that range of things, 6 months maybe.
Are you
Um,
excited for it? I mean, the delay, I don't think the delay is too shocking. I'll be honest. I feel like
no,
most movies now are kind of getting pushed back for whatever reason.
yeah, and I think it's the typical issues that we've been seeing around COVID and stuff like that. Still plagues, I think, production of movies. I think my bigger thing with this is like has anyone like looked at the casting, like Chris Pratt as Mario? Doesn't the man does
Yeah.
not scream Italian plumber? And like you said, you kind of alluded to this in the intro, right? Like it's a pretty star-studded cast: Anya Taylor-Joy, Charlie Day, Jack Black, Keegan Michael Key. Like literally everybody on the list is somebody that I know of
Fred
or have
Armisen's
seen
in it,
before.
Seth Rogen. Yeah.
Yeah, like all. And for me, when you have an ensemble cast, it's a huge red flag. To me, it really is because it's like, hey, let's take a big IP, a known IP that is going to draw people in just by the name, like Mario. Let's throw in a bunch of big name stars that will also have their own draw just because of who they are as individuals, whether or not they're good or bad for the parts that they're being cast for. They will bring people to theaters, and it's a recipe to milk money with a really subpar film. So I'm not feeling positive on the overall like how production quality. I don't think it's going to be a good movie is what it comes down to.
Yeah, I think subpar is harsh. Though. I mean, who I'm not expecting an Oscar-winning movie. Entertaining Super Mario movie is all I'm expecting. Charlie Day is Luigi. I think will be funny. The accent, I'm not quite sure. Charlie Day's kind of only got one voice. It is entertaining. I mean, I'm a fan. Always Sunny. But I do still love the Chris Pratt spoof of just the "we gabagool." It cracks me up. I
Oh
do
man.
expect a very awful Jersey Italian, not quite like my boy Colin Farrell did in the Batman with his just beautiful take on Jersey Italian with the Penguin. Absolutely loved it.
I
Probably
mean,
I was
it
cracking up
was
when I
well
saw that.
acted.
So, but
Um, I don't know, man. I mean, so you're gonna see it first of all, yes or no?
yeah, absolutely. I'm excited to be entertained. Fred Armisen, I think him as Cranky Kong will be hilarious. The Seth Rogen, I mean, that's like fan service on a lot of accounts. I don't know if we need Donkey Kong in that said movie, but it's gonna be entertaining. Like, why not? I mean, I can watch it with my nephews, or maybe it's gonna be a bit more adult, crude humor, and like I can laugh my ass off.
All
If
right,
they do any sort of spoofs from the old '80s cartoon, I'm definitely
and
gonna
so
crack
why
up
are you
because that was
going
a
then? Are you
joke
going
filled
because
show.
you think it's gonna be a good time? Is what you're saying? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Okay. I mean, I'm gonna go out of obligation. I feel like I can't not see this movie and be on this podcast at the same time. Like I said, I'm not holding out a lot of hopes. I think Jack Black's going to be a shining star in the midst of this. Probably Keegan Michael Key as well. And other than that, I think it's going to be not super amazing. for the most
They're
part.
coming
But
down are pretty hard.
look, if I keep my expectations low, then I can only go up from there. So, I mean, let's talk about things we might have better expectations for. If you want to kick us off on the Batman.
Yes, somebody kind of hinted at it with Colin Farrell playing the Penguin, which, spoiler alert, if you haven't seen the trailer or you're not one of the, I don't know what, 20 million have watched it this week on HBO Max. The Batman will officially get a sequel, which I think the timing of this isn't surprising with it being on HBO Max. I think it's surprising because the movie has only been out total Calamity theater release, and then on the HBO, basically your at home theater release. For what, 4 months? Maybe less than
No,
that.
2 months, I
3 months?
think. I don't think it's even been a full 2 months because I think the initial release was March 4th. And so we're recording here at the end of April.
Yeah.
So it
Geez,
hasn't
my
even been a
timeframe's
full
all
two
off.
months yet.
So, which is, I don't know, that's kind of surprising to me for them to announce it. I like it and I don't like it. How about you? I'll get to that in a second. Though.
Yeah, I've got a lot of mixed feelings about it. I watched it. There were definitely some shining parts to it overall. For me, I thought sometimes there was like they were trying to be edgy, which when you're trying to be edgy, I think comes across cringy at times. Like the opening stuff very much was like in that vein of things. And then I think it found its pace as it went along. I enjoyed it. Not sure I was a huge fan of this interpretation of the Riddler per se. I mean, more grounded character. I like that. It's not bad. Like I mean, some people really absolutely fucking love this movie, right? And to be clear, if I was putting it on a scale of like 1 to 10, for me, it's probably a solid 7 or 8. Like it's up there. Like I legitimately enjoyed the movie as well.
Yeah, I'm canceling the show.
But I don't know. I still think it had its kind of sore points. Colin Farrell's portrayal of Penguin was great. Zoe Kravitz's Catwoman was pretty solid.
Wait,
I
7 or 8?
don't want to see them come out with Joker. Is my big fear for the sequel.
That I'm with you on. 7 or 8 is crazy to me. Like you're drunk. I don't even
for,
know.
for putting it that high or that low?
That low. I think this is
Really?
This is up there with Logan for me as best comic book movie ever made. Straight
Wow.
up. This is a 10 out of 10 film. This is an amazing fucking film.
I mean, I knew
Comic book
people
movie or
loved it. I
not,
just didn't
it's
realize you were
it's
one
in the
of them.
Logan realm because you don't need to know the source material to appreciate this film. It is one of the most well acted films I have seen in ages. As far as the complete cast is knocking it out of the park. I don't think it felt like 3 hours. I think there's parts you could nitpick for sure with it, but overall, there's very few superhero films that are just standalone films. And that's what I love about this is that it was just a great film all the way through, cinematography wise, everything. And again, spoiler alert with this stuff, guys. It's the first time we saw Batman lose. We've never seen that before. And I thought that was so well done. And then the idea then too that he is angsty. You have the year one mixed with the long Halloween throughout the story. But then now you have him realizing that, like, yes, he can't just be angsty, trying to be vengeance and filling a gap in him. He has to be more. And by him losing, he discovers that. My biggest flaw with this is Joker wasn't needed. And that's why I don't know if I like the movie so much, so I'm excited for the sequel, but I don't like the idea of the Joker being the next one. I thought they did a phenomenal job with the Riddler. I thought Paul Dano deserves an Oscar for his performance with it 100%.
Wow. Okay.
And I mean, that whole scene in the interrogation room when he's finally caught, that sealed it for me. That's what put the whole movie over the top for me because
really, because that's where I lost a few points for me.
See, I think you went into it just being like, I want to be wowed.
No, because I feel like Paul Dano's version of the Riddler was very much inspired by Heath Ledger's version of the Joker. Like they very much were touching similar veins for me. And like the movie itself, I think preserves some great themes in terms of class disparity and the differences in wealth. And like the three main characters, right? Riddler, Batman, and Catwoman, all three are orphans, but they all come from different circumstances. And the movie kind of explores like how their different privilege or wealth affected the way they grew up and then the choices they make and the characters they ultimately end up becoming, obviously. And like I liked the larger themes. I like that even though this was like definitely early Batman, we didn't get an origin story. Thank God for that. I don't need to see his parents get killed for the millionth time. You know what I mean? Like we all know that. So that was all very solidly done in my opinion. I thought Paul Dano's character though compared too much to Heath Ledger's Joker, but I would have liked to see that be more like, frankly, Colin Farrell's Penguin was a very unique interpretation of Penguin that really fucking drew me in, and I was sold on. Like, I loved his version of Penguin, and it was completely unique to him. I've never seen it played that way before in animated
but
or big screen fashion.
I guess in that sense, the animation thing, but like to me, that's Oswald Cobblepot. He doesn't really have. He's just a thug, and the North Jersey side of it cracks me because it's the whole like when they're showing the picture. Hey, what are you doing? Get out of here! I was dying. That was great, but talking a little bit long on it.
Absolutely going long on this one, but
mixed results for. But
regardless,
shifting gears completely. Elden Ring, Twitch streamer by the name of Nintendo TV, phenomenal name there, made a Game Boy port of Elden Ring, basically Final Fantasy-esque. Played the original Final Fantasies on the Game Boy, classic RPG style. He basically made a kind of a quick little trailer to his audience and is going to make the game level by level on his Twitch stream. Pretty cool thing.
Yeah, and I gotta say, for me, one of the things that was interesting about this is I've never heard the term demake before, right? This isn't a remake of the game. This is a demake, as in we're taking something that's modern and polished and taking it and making it in an older style, using older technology, and it's pixel graphics, obviously, and everything else. So it's basically being taken back, and so it's referred to as a demake, which I think is a very interesting concept in terms of how these games play out in an older style, because I think I've made this comparison before, or maybe you have. One of us has definitely said that these games are like modern day Mario equivalents, right? Like, you get hit once or twice and you're down, right? So like the difficulty is really like, this is what we were playing with in those older games. You just didn't have the health bars, everything else. And so it seems super hard, but like you only got hit once or twice in Mario and you was out. You know what I mean? Like, so I don't see it being so different in Legacy. Demaking it, as they call it, and bringing it back to a Game Boy version, back to those kind of roots, I think is actually a very kind of like true to the franchise interpretation of Elden Ring.
No, for sure. I think it's a cool thing. I think it's a cool thing for his, Twitch audience to kind of do. It makes me kind of interested to kind of watch it and see the process of it. Also, too, I think Elden Ring lore might make more sense in this format.
That's interesting you bring that up. I need to get the game and play it. But from what I hear, it's storytelling, that there is a lot of story there. It's just hard to understand it completely.
Yeah,
so
polarizing thing. I know some fans will crucify me at the stake for saying that. Others will also agree.
Yeah. Well, I mean, speaking of Twitch, I guess the next thing we need to talk about is that Twitch is looking to boost its own profit margins. And they're looking to do that by cutting streamer profit margins. So basically, they're looking to change the way they distribute the money. The cut that comes to Twitch will be increased, which means less to the streamers. It's one of those things, like, I don't understand it at all, because like from my perspective, this is purely motivated by money. There's no other benefit to this. There's no reason for this, and it's also not, as far as I know, that the company's losing money or non-profitable. That like they're in a situation where they need to take some sort of drastic action to generate funds. So they just see a way to make more money and they're going for it. Is what it comes across as. Am I missing something here?
Yeah, I think what surprised me is this stuff too. Is that the first time we've seen this or discussed about it? I mean, the Facebook with their meta and 50%, because it's going from 70% take home as far as content creators to 50. That's a 20% swing, which is pretty crazy. And it's like, even at 30%, Twitch is still making, hand over fist with money and whatnot as well. To not get 20% to me that's insane.
Well, and to be clear too, it's 20% of the overall. Because if you're taking from 70% of the overall down to 50, what does that actually work out to in terms of
your take home?
It's like a 30% cut in their actual take home profits. So it's an even larger cut in what they actually end up taking home than just that 20%. So it's like a 30%
It's one of those
drop.
things to where, I don't know, similar to the argument we had two shows ago on Spectator Mode here with the meta and Epic's metaverse. What's the lure then to be a content creator and go on this platform? You're kind of forced then to the audience, and you're tied to, and you're almost anchored in. And it is a lot of just corporate greed of like, you're making good money. Why do you need to do this if you're a Twitch? Aside from just, you can get away with it, and the audience and the content creators are kind of stuck with you.
Yeah, because like end of the day, and I'll be interested to see how this plays out too, because not that streaming I think was ever super profitable to begin with, but like Twitch specifically, right, lives and dies by its content creators. It doesn't actually do anything else on its own, of which I'm aware, to generate revenue streams. It needs people on its site streaming
Though
to be able to generate revenue. So like if you hurt your streamers, how do you make money?
I'm curious to see what their live championship streams are and takeaways from that. Because then if you talk about League of Legends, you talk about esports on the collegiate and professional level, is that fielding it more so than essentially their bread and butter with content creators? But unfortunately, content creators are taking the bigger heap. So
Well, 'cause, like,
Twitch's
I thought
logic
part of
is
it
like,
too-
hey, if we can make 50% of the Super Bowl for esports, why aren't we?
I mean, maybe, because like, the only other thing I can think of too is like ads and stuff. But like you can't run an ad for somebody who's not watching or on a channel that doesn't exist anymore, right? So if by increasing their own profits, cutting streamers' pay essentially, there's fewer streamers, those channels will close down. They can't run ads on those. That's fewer viewers. Like, I don't know. It seems I guess I'm not a business guy, because to me this only seems like a short-term money grab for long-term pain. But maybe there's something going on that I don't understand. And if anyone knows, please feel free to educate me. I'm happy to listen on this at least, because I will admit this is not my area of expertise. But we do tend to be pretty harsh on companies a lot when it comes to representation, inclusion, whether they're doing it as money grabs, speaking of, whether they're doing it just for the money or because they actually believe in these things. And I want to give props to a company that I've previously come down on pretty hard for this stuff, which is Disney. Now, let's be clear. I personally think that whether they're doing it for the profits or out of sincerity doesn't matter. Inclusiveness and stuff in portrayals and on screen is important regardless. But I have still been one of those people in the camp of like, I don't think they're sincere in these portrayals. I think they're doing it because it generates them money. Disney has come out and has taken a stand to say that they will not cut out gay references, LGBTQ references in Doctor Strange 2 for the Saudi Arabia airing. It amounts to a little bit less than 12 seconds, where one of the characters who is canonically gay also has gay mothers. And she mentions that, like, she just mentions that she has two mothers instead of two fathers, right? Or like a mother and father kind of deal. That's literally all it is. And Saudi Arabia is like, hey, we don't want that in our media. And Disney, for their part, are like, we don't care. We think this isn't a big deal and we're going to leave it in there. So it means they're probably going to lose out on that market. And you know what? Kudos to Disney.
No, I mean, I can't. I'm with you. It's a good move by Disney in that sense of being like, hey, we're not going to back down. But to Disney's point, I am surprised to see them actually have some gusto and stick to their guns and essentially pull the movie from Saudi Arabia, which seems like they're going to have to do. And to the point too, it's 12 seconds, so it's also like, hey, what's the big deal kind of thing too. I'd be curious if it was the main character and in it for maybe 90 minutes, if Disney would have the same decision. I don't know.
Why don't we try to bring this home a little bit with PlayStation Plus
all right.
and their new premium tier? So tell me what that's about.
Well, we've talked about PlayStation Plus and their tiers and basically their version of the Xbox Game Pass. The big news coming out this week is that basically PlayStation told developers that any game that's over $35 has to have a 2-hour trial. Be some exceptions to where you can do a quick free trial, and they're basically going to be very subjective with that of like, okay, game A may get that, game B may not. But overall, they're saying to developers, if your game is $35 on PlayStation Plus, you need a 2-hour trial, which I think is interesting for a lot of reasons. Because would that make you want to become a PlayStation Plus subscriber if you have guaranteed 2 hours of gameplay for pretty much any game available to you?
Yes. For me, that's a huge selling point. Because I think one of the biggest issues plaguing the gaming industry right now is pre-sales and pre-reviews and stuff like that being largely misleading, basically. And different companies do better and worse jobs with these things. But long story short, I think we've seen several times, some of them famously, where games were released and did not live up to expectations or were massively buggy on launch and like just had all kinds of issues on release one way or another. But people were already out the money, or they put in too many hours for refund policies to work anymore, that they couldn't get their money back by the time they were just like, I've tried to struggle through this and I can't anymore. And it's been very anti-consumer in that respect. And having a guaranteed trial period is very pro-consumer. Lets me get in there, play the actual game, see how it's working, see if there's bugs or anything, and make an informed decision about how I'm spending my money based on my own experiences and not what I've been told by some, media outlet or some reviewer who, whether they were paid for that or whatever the heck went on behind the scenes, maybe, or just how much my views align with their views on that kind of basic level, right? Like they could love the game and I could absolutely hate it just because we have different ideas of what's fun and what's not fun. You know what I mean? So it's a very pro-consumer move. And if you told me that I could trial any game before committing to it and spending that money, yeah, I would definitely bump up for the premium version, because I think in the long run, if that even got me out of playing one game, like from buying a game for $60 or something, and then I'm just like, no, I think that saves me my money. You know what I mean? So it's worth it.
I'm curious to see what developers' responses to this, because for a game like Elden Ring or basically any RPG, 2 hours could be the intro, like Mass Effect especially. That's the intro. You don't have to change anything. It's basically just, boom, you can get to play the intro. Formula One does a great job with the My Team mode. You can create a team and then carry that over into the actual game if you do buy it and you made that in the trial. What I'm curious to see is games like Super Meat Boy or Celeste, to where it's 2 hours is a good chunk of the game then, if you're flying through it and really pumping it out. Granted, a lot of those games is basically the 100% the completionist, and that's kind of part of platforming. But you could really end up playing almost a third of a game in some of those indie games. So I'm curious to see how they respond to this.
I mean, but then wouldn't the counter argument be that they shouldn't be releasing above the $35 price point? You know what I mean? Like, if you're going to make a game that is shorter, both in terms of story and like long-term playability might be a simpler system, then like maybe you don't price it up in the $40, $50 range of like what a AAA title costs. You know what I mean?
You say you're not a businessman.
I don't know. I mean, it just kind of, because it does seem like a game you can play in terms of like if you're an indie developer or whatever. Like, I feel like you can get away with selling your game for a little bit cheaper to not have to deal with the issues of the trial. And if you're a large game publisher or developer, then the cost you spend on developing your games, you're going to be required to sell it at a higher price, which means you're also going to be required to have the trial versions. You know what I mean? And like I said, for one of those games that run like $50, $60, I think the yearly cost of the PlayStation Premium is $120. If I nope out of one game that would have otherwise been a purchase and I would have lost that money for $50, that's paid for half of it. If I nope out of two of them, that's paid for almost all of it. You know what I mean? So like that $20, or I'm sorry, that 2-hour trial, that extra, whatever it is, like $20, $30, or it is more to do the premium service, has the potential to save me that money in the long term. So I would definitely go for it.
That wraps up us for this week. Join us next week. I'm sure we'll have another whole list of maybe some recurring themes that we've had the last couple of weeks, which is good. But as always, guys, please do, if you're a Twitch streamer or you follow anybody, drop us some comments on the Twitch bit, because I'd really love to hear what y'all think about that. I know Double D would as well.
Yeah.
You all have any topics do you want to see next episode or in the coming weeks? Drop us a line as well. But as always, thanks for listening. Thanks for supporting, and catch y'all next week.